They are innovators, game changers, people pushing themselves, moving us all forward. They are the next scientists, musicians, poets, the next makers, dreamers, teachers, and geniuses. They are the next list.
I'm Dr. Sanjay Gupta. Today on the next list, two innovators worlds apart. In Africa, self-starter Dan Agola takes on healthcare and turns his once humble village into a medical boomtown. But first, a look at beauty innovator Francesco Clark.
Clark's Botanicals is one of the most innovative skincare lines I've actually seen in my entire career.
How a devastating injury transformed his life.
I didn't know what it meant to break your neck. I just couldn't process it, that he wasn't gonna move, that he would be paralyzed.
And how something as simple as skin cream helped pave his way to recovery.
It was the first time that I really saw the power of this industry that a lot of people look at as frivolous, like beauty. It's only about the way that you look. For me, it was about the way that I felt.
Rick Baldwin has his story.
I was told, you will never get better. You will never move your arms. Don't even think about your legs. Don't even bother. I literally could not look in a mirror. And if I was in a room with a lot of windows or glass and I saw my reflection, I would just burst into tears because all I would see was these four wheels that I'm sitting on. I'm Francesco Clark and I am the founder of Clark's Botanicals.
You face a choice when you sustain a spinal cord injury, and you can either be proactive and accepting and pursue certain goals, or you can be totally passive and reliant on others and really not do anything.
The day that Christopher Reeve passed away, this very kind of subtle shift in my thinking happened. And I realized I wanted to take more responsibility for what happened and for myself. And also I wanted to become an advocate for other people with disabilities.
The skincare line, how did that whole idea come about?
Clark's Botanicals didn't start as, it wasn't a business idea. One of the side effects of my spinal cord injury is that my skin doesn't react to hot and cold as yours does. So when it's very hot, I don't sweat. I had acne everywhere, but it was unreactive to any $500 cream, $3 cream, prescription, over-the-counter, anything you could buy or try, nothing worked. So my father, being a homeopathic doctor and a traditional doctor, I turned to him and I said, you have to help me.
So they set up like a lab in the kitchen, and my brother would test these out on my sister Charlotte and see what sort of reaction she would have.
Yeah, I contributed by stealing a lot of the products from him, or borrowing, I guess I should say.
My sister started to use the products, and then my mom started to use the products, and they started to take vials from the kitchen when we would make them.
Francesco and his father had actually investigated 78 botanical products to find the best combination for the best skincare range that they could possibly produce. And there it was.
When I had a meeting with Glenda Bailey, who used to work with at Harper's Bazaar, she said, you know, your skin looks a lot better. What are you using? And so I had this little ugly glass vial behind my chair, and I said, oh, I'm just using this. It's not a big deal. I'm making it in the kitchen with my dad. Not thinking anything of it, just giving it to her like a gift. And then we get a call from Alexander Parnas, the beauty director.
You can believe I was absolutely blown away by meeting this kid from Westchester who suddenly sent me a sample on my desk that was one of the best skincare products I'd ever tried.
In this one phone call, it went from this idea of gaining a sense of my life back and a sense of independence and a sense of self to now this is a company. We used the apple stem cells that we use in the cellular lifting serum, which you know.
Which I know.
And then we added microalgae to it, so it's going to actually tighten the skin.
It started with the lip balm, and that became a cult hit. He has a moisturizer, he has a couple divine masks, He has his cellular lifting serum, his new cellular lifting spray, which I'm excited to try.
And he's sold at Saks on Fifth Avenue, Space NK, CO Bigelow in New York.
We just launched in Australia. We just launched in South Korea. We just launched in Russia and Kazakhstan.
That's the fantastic thing about Francesco, is that he's really chosen a path, and it's incredibly admirable what he's managed to achieve in such a short period of time, and see how driven and motivated he is.
Clark's Botanicals is really a reflection of Francesco. The brand is him. And the fact that he did it all, used an injury as the catalyst. I'm incredibly proud of what he's achieved.
Up next, a risky trip to China pays off.
When I came out of surgery, my sister said, "Well, what are you doing?" And I said, "I think I can feel my ribs."
Still ahead, entrepreneur Dan Agola engineers an economic boom in one of Kenya's poorest regions.
Take me back, though, to that night, just because I want to get you on record explaining.
Right. So the day that I was injured, I was 24 years old, and it was a time in my life when everything was going right. I was working at Harper's Bazaar, and I had a summer share in Long Island. And there was a pool at the house, and the metal ring ladders that they normally put in the deep end was actually put in the shallow end. The second that I dove in, my chin hit the bottom of the pool, and my head snapped back with such force that it shattered my C3, C4 vertebrae. I was completely awake, completely conscious, and paralyzed. And the first thing that I thought was, you are an idiot.
I just couldn't process it, that he would be paralyzed. And I also didn't realize that he almost drowned.
They prepare you for the absolute worst case scenario. And fortunately, Francesco's proven them wrong on a number of points. Like he'd never be able to move his arms or his wrists, and he's been able to do a lot of that.
There's nothing wrong with my body except that the nerves are severed in my spinal cord. How do we make those nerves grow? The surgery in China involved using embryonic stem cells and my DNA and converting them into these types of cells called glial cells, which help your nerves grow. So once these cells were put into my spinal cord, they would help my nerves regenerate.
So there was a lot of waiting, a lot of nervousness.
When I came out of surgery, and suddenly I started to go like this with my left hand on my ribs, my sister said, "Well, what are you doing?" And I said, "I think I can feel my ribs." The most important part of my recovery is questioning whatever was going on at the time. So watching Christopher Reeve do the treadmill study, I looked into doing the treadmill study at Kessler with Dr. Gail Forrest. The treadmill study would involve me going into a parachute harness, which is not comfortable. And then you have one physical therapist at each leg, and I would walk for about an hour, depending on how I felt. And so as I started to initiate a movement in my leg is when I started to look into this new robotic research study that was happening, this new, brain study that was happening. And it just felt like this domino effect.
What's the goal for you here with your work?
What we're trying to do here is get people to be able to regain use as much as possible with guided therapies and priming techniques that we have with the brain stimulation of their own muscles, and that will then translate into better quality of life for these people.
How far along have you come in terms of your movement?
When I was first, from day one, moving my arms, so, touching my nose, scratching my nose, going like this to scratching my head, I would have to think about throwing my hand to my face. And it would be very, very violent because I had no real control over those muscles. Thinking about lifting my wrist was impossible even a year ago. And now I'm starting to use a fork to feed myself. I'm clearly using and I don't shut up. It's like I'm breathing and talking and...
You're talking, you're
Yeah.
moving, you're
Yeah.
gesticulating.
Yeah. It's not to say that it happens very quickly and that it's progressing very quickly. I want it to speed up. You know, I'm very impatient and I do want to be more independent using my hands walking in the next 3 to 5 years. Hello?
Yes, I expect him to walk again. And you know, whatever I have to do to help him achieve it, I'll do it. But if he says so, then I believe it.
When you look in the mirror today, who do you see?
I was thinking about that a couple of weeks ago. My nephew is 7 years old and my niece is 5. They were looking at photos from before I was injured. My niece said, "Oh, but you're not sitting, you're standing." My nephew was like, "Well, yeah, so he's standing, big deal. It's the same thing, it's just still him." And then it kind of made me look from a different point of view and understand how life throws curveballs at everybody. And I am lucky to have survived. And just thinking of being a memory of somebody who drowned in a pool instead of where I am today makes me feel so grateful. It makes me work harder, and it makes me proud to be in this Italian family that's so closely knit and loving and just an amazing experience.